You don't have to be a millennial to be socially savvy. We believe anyone can join Generation Social Media, and your journey starts now. This is the Generation Social Media Podcast by Chatterkick.
All right. Well, welcome to the podcast, Michelle. We're so glad to have you join us. I've really enjoyed our conversations. And my thought today was I'm happy to share how we figured out flexibility for Chatterkick. We are not perfect. I'm happy to give you all of our what we came to the conclusion of, and I'd love to hear if we made the right call. You're the experts in this stuff, and so we're going to kind of switch this format up. You're going to actually ask me questions today, and so hopefully we did the right things. So we'll kind of just get started.
Okay, perfect. Well, so I believe, I don't think anyone has like the perfect right answer right now, right? I believe that there's a lot of unknown. We're trying to figure it out, and you guys are going to adjust, which that's what you guys do really well. But kind of looking back on, okay, flexibility at Chatterkick, flexibility anywhere for that matter. We're gonna, as a business, we're gonna start looking at how do we, blend what is now and what was and come up with something and really make it work. What are some tactics that business owners that they can put into place as they are working on figuring this out? What are some things you can share with them?
Yeah. So I'll just kind of share the way that we approach this. We actually had this conversation. It was the end of December, early January. So before we knew what this was going to look like and how much we would lean on this plan. But we've always had kind of a flexible environment at Chatterkick. We have a team of about 20, a lot of young families and just employees in their kind of mid career and early career life cycles, I guess you could say. And so what works for us isn't always going to work for others. But I think what we noticed happening was people didn't know what flexibility meant to them. And it was meaning something different to everybody. It was meaning something different to managers. It was meaning something different to me as the owner. And it was meaning something different to the people who were working with our clients. Social media never stops. So it was really kind of confusing, I think, in many regards. So one of our goals in 2020 was really to clear that up, to define what flexibility meant, to make it simple enough that people could remember. Because I will tell you, we started with these massive docs and we were trying to figure it out. And my executive team was helping me. And, it was a lot. And I think what we ended with was really simple. And to me, that's always a really good sign that anybody could take it and read it and understand it. It's like, oh, yeah, even though it was so much work that we put into it. So the first thing we started with is just two words of what flexibility meant for us. And it's going to mean something a little bit different to everybody. But the words that we picked were trust and accountability. If we had those two things within our organization, flexibility would be no big deal. We didn't really care the time that people worked. We really didn't care about, all the other factors. But if we had that trust and accountability, and that kind of leads to reliability, we would be in a really good starting point. So that's where we first started. Then we started going into like subcategories. So working remotely. If you're working remotely and not on site, because we have kind of an interesting dynamic of we have an office space in Sioux City, and then we have co-working kind of groupings throughout the country, which I imagine that model is definitely going to get some really good traction as people kind of try to figure this out. But if you haven't looked at that and you have smaller teams that need to collaborate in other areas, that co-working is amazing because what happens is you can bring teams together in physical places, which I really, really believe in. But when COVID happened, we didn't have all this real estate that just was sitting there. And we could just pause our subscriptions or, really flex and adjust in real time. And, for any business that has a workplace or a workforce that they plan on expanding, those co-working spaces, I can't say enough about them. They've been awesome. They provide snacks. They're cool. They're hip. And so that was really something that we leaned into before all of this happened. But one of the things that we talked about when you're working remotely is you need to have technology, the working equipment, and you need a professional background. Those were the three things that if you had all those three checked and you prioritized and over communicated, we were like, okay, this is going to work. We're going to be able to make this happen. And what we found was a lot of our employees, they just needed some focus time at times. It's funny to say this now because now we're all like, I need humans. But at that time, it was like, I need just some quiet space. And so we also had to talk about what a professional background looks like and do's and don'ts. And you need to give people visuals. You need to give them examples. Go find a picture of somebody's goofy background and say, why doesn't this work? We have to train our people why it doesn't work. Is a bed in the background okay or not? Is what'd you say?
A good point.
And
Right?
and I think people have been a little bit more casual about it since so many more people are remote. But I will tell you, every single time that you're on camera, people are inspecting your background, right? Before this, I'm like, oh, I have a hair tie on the couch. I'm going to move it. But I think it's just so important. And, you know, if you have a pet, is it going to bark if your UPS comes in? And just kind of trying to work through those scenarios with people, make them understand in a way that is very tactical and obvious, even though it makes sense to some people, it may not to others. So I would highly recommend just going through scenarios of like what a professional background looks like. What are the expectations when you're on video, especially now, right? Do you need your headphones in? Do you need what if your kids are in the background? Like, tell your employees your expectations, because if they don't have those, you can't be mad at them for breaking the rules that they didn't know existed.
Correct. Correct.
And I noticed myself doing that all the time, where I would get frustrated with I don't even know if it was with team members, but it was with situations. But I never told anybody, so it really wasn't fair for me to be like, well, this person always has this in the background. Well, why don't I just say something, right?
Right.
Or, like, make sure you look like you didn't just roll out of bed. Like, that's all I'm asking. So I just think setting those clear expectations is really, really critical.
Well, and it's setting the expectations, which is something that we should be doing every day anyway, in everything that we're doing, right? The person's responsibilities and the expectations of what job they're doing and the quality of that work. And it's just taking it, which I don't know why we don't think about it, but oftentimes we don't. It's taking it that next step, saying, okay, we're going to allow that remote, or it's going to happen, whether it's forced or not, right? And yeah, these are the things, and the idea that you bring up about having visuals. We learn, we're such visual people, and that's the way we learn best. And when we see something, this is what I'm saying, it creates clarity. And when we
Right.
get to clarity, then people have a better understanding. They understand how to stay on the tracks, and they know what they should do and shouldn't do. It allows them to make better decisions, but yet still feel like they're in control.
Right.
So those expectations meet so many of our basic needs in the sense of just those feelings of being able to take control, make those decisions, know what I can and cannot do, but yet I still get to make choices, and having the clarity of understanding what you expect. So you're not, I know sometimes in groups we'll talk about keeping score, but it's those little
Right.
things that, you're thinking about, that you're telling yourself, and then they don't know that you're thinking it, but
Right.
yet you're holding it against them.
Right.
You're upset with them on, you expressed this, but is it really this, or was it this? Oh yeah, and this little thing that just happened, now you're really upset about. So creating clear expectations on how to work at home is perfect. How about like the KPIs and that? So you mentioned trust and accountability, right?
Yep.
And I heard you say that. Um, I'm going to go with trust is that we trust each other, that I trust that you have good intentions,
Yep.
that you're going to be doing the right things, and that you trust me. So we're giving each other trust as well, right?
Right.
And then that accountability, it's I can't be accountable for you, but it's personal accountability,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
So yeah, tell us a little more about that, and then the KPIs, or what are some systems that you put in place to help improve that understanding, create clarity with projects that you're working on, deadlines, and so forth, and measuring our success, which probably isn't much different than when we were in the office. It just may look a little different. I'm curious.
Yeah. So, I think the accountability is one thing that I definitely have gotten wrong in the past. I've like, as growing up with through Chatterkick, we've been around for 8 years, I've definitely learned a lot. And I think in the beginning and even recently, accountability to me was rules and following rules. And if you didn't follow the rules, you get in trouble. Right.
Mhm.
And that was what I thought accountability really was. And I think I had to really switch my thought process on that. Our team had to switch our thought process that it's personal accountability because I can't really control what anybody else does. And so all I can do is foster a great environment, and every individual has to rise up. And I think one of the ways we simplified it, because, the overachievers and the high achievers in remote environments, they don't get the recognition that sometimes they really crave.
Mhm.
And so they'll just burn themselves out fast. And so one of the things that we said to people on the accountability is raise the flag if your balance is off. It's up to you to tell me, because you could be great and I would not, but I thought you had too many projects, or you could be drowning in what I thought was only a couple of things. And so we really want to give that power to our employees to say, if your balance is off and you're like not able to handle it, you need to come and raise the flag and say, it's too much. I need adjustment. Help me prioritize, help me move things around a little bit. And so that was one thing that we really tried to empower our team with. The other thing is we had a checklist of probably 6 things. So it's not overwhelmingly 30 things that you need to do every day, but
Mhm.
it was really about, is your calendar up to date? It needs to be up to date. Everybody needs access so that I know if I'm trying to get a hold of you and it's an emergency and you're in a webinar, then I might have to use a different way to get a hold of you. The other thing is, if you're going to take a lunch with your family on a picnic or whatever, that's okay, but you need to communicate that. And you need to mark, it's kind of like Slack, it's a chat channel. I know
Mhm.
people are using different, but we expect those to be updated every day in different parts of the day so that I don't have to go dig around and try to find, 20 different people's calendars. I can just be like, oh, this person is out for lunch. So even though I may be putting information into chat, I may realize and not get mad if they don't get back to me in 45 minutes, right? So that was one that we had for an expectations. And then that any of like paid time off, vacation, that all needs to be updated. It's pretty obvious. And then if you're completely out of the office, make sure that you're obviously marking that. So those were kind of the across the board KPIs that we put in place. And we really did rally and we said, okay, everybody, if we do this, this is the reward that we'll get after we kind of try this flexibility plan and policy. And, we're all going towards the same goal. And it was kind of fun to all hold each other accountable. So it's not just top down management.
Yes. And so kind of like what you described, I think about as that internal communication and that strategy, that how do we communicate, understand what people have going on, because you can still work in the same building. And if you're not at your area where you normally work, and people don't know where you're at. And I know a lot of companies that are really big that people will, to get that focus time that we were talking about, they'll
Hmm.
go hide in a conference room.
Right.
And they're hiding in the conference room, not for bad reasons. It's because they really want to focus and get things done.
Right.
But then people can't, no one knows where they're at, right? And it's like, what is our communication strategy in the sense of how do we keep people in the know of not that we want to track or know what you're doing, but it's just, I can now better understand, oh yeah, Beth's not going to get back to me until probably 2.
Right.
Um, so I can plan appropriately based off of what's going on. So it sounds those basic KPIs. I know internally when you're not remote or so critical, but then going remote, I agree 100% that those are those key things. Keeping your calendar up to date. We look at each other's calendars versus doing that drive by to see if you're in your office, right?
Right.
We look at whatever that chat we're using, and you keep those statuses up to date. And it's just so we know if I can reach you, if you're not available, if you are available, and if you have it in your calendar and you have certain things blocked off, I can plan Friday. I need to get with you, but it looks like probably 2 o'clock is that's based off of you guys' schedules, that going to work. So I am agree 100% that that was for that accountability and the KPIs. That's huge. What were some other things that you guys had put into place on that accountability of maybe the projects, things that you're
Mhm.
working on, how you track that?
Well, one thing that we did is we tried to really simplify like 4 KPIs per role. And again, we're trying to keep things so it's not over systematized, right? We have 20 employees, so we do need some boundaries and guidelines, but um, we're a creative agency. So there's a lot of creativity that comes in, and there's innovation that needs to happen. And I want people to have that kind of headspace for it. But just establishing the how would I know if you're doing a good job? If someone asked me that as a CEO and as the leader of the company, and I could easily name off this for all the roles, right? But sometimes we don't write that down, or sometimes we don't even communicate that. And so that was one thing that we just said, okay, this is what success looks like. You're hitting these KPIs, you're updating your calendar, you're communicating where you are and the things that you need. You're not stalling communication. That was the other thing. Because if you're stalling communication, that creates extreme bottlenecks from collaboration, especially when we're all remote. So that quick response, even if it's like, hey, I got this, can't get to it right now, but just let you know, like I'll be able to get it to you by the end of the day. And
Yeah.
just training and teaching that is just so critical. I think in order to really embrace this remote world. And to be fair, don't get me wrong, things aren't like all sunshine and rainbows all the time. We're still trying to figure this stuff out, especially for us. I think I mentioned this in a previous podcast, but we didn't realize how hard having all of our children home was going to hit us. And not only just having them here with us, but trying to make sure that they're learning and teaching. And, I have a lot of employees with babies and kids, and like that's a whole different dynamic that really, we had to figure things out. And we just really said for nights, weekends, off hours, do the best that you can, prioritize those things with calendars, communication, and status updates, and get the work done as best as you can. The timing of it may be off, meaning like it could be at 10 o'clock at night, but it'll still be by the end of the day in air quotes, right? um
Exactly.
so that's kind of some of the ways that we've been able to help our provide, I think, a little more clarity with the flexibility.
Well, and I know this is where we're at today right now is that extreme. But what about that new hire? You're looking to fill a position, right? And right now we still are, maybe we're still working remote and we're not going to interview them face to face necessarily, kind of depend on your business and decisions you guys make. What are some of the best practices or at least tactics that you can suggest for people on how they can um, better communicate what we're looking for and also then go through that interview process to get better at finding that new employee. And then my gosh, you've got the training too, right? I would imagine most often we're used to training people face to face and showing them around, kind of going back to what are those new rituals. Originally our ritual might have been, oh, we've got their day planned out, they're sitting with different people and they're getting to know the team, we go to lunch. Oh, well, that's not going to happen right now. So what are the new rituals as we're bringing on boarding? So I kind of asked you two. One's the interview and then
Yeah.
sorry, the one's the interview and the other one is, have we talked about those rituals if we're going to hire someone? Because what are some key things that we should be thinking about to help set that new person up for success so they get to feel who Chatterkick or whoever, the company is, they get to feel who you really are, not just we're stressed. This is,
Right.
guy is falling. We want them to feel good about their decision and, set them up for success.
So, a couple of things that I think make a big difference. First of all, if you're a business and you haven't realized that the talent pool and the talent that's in the market right now is insane. So, talk about opportunity to bring people onto your team across the country. If you can make your business happen remote, you will have access and the opportunity to get some of the best and brightest. I wholeheartedly believe that. Because it's really opened up the talent pool. So that's something I really wanted to preface. But when it comes to bringing someone on or even hiring and screening, let me just tell you a little bit about what we've done. And first, we use social media to recruit, and we're definitely looking for candidates, with certain skill sets depending on the role. Um, Indeed has a free like assessment that they have. They have all different categories from social media to critical thinking. It's free. And for many businesses, Indeed can serve as your applicant tracking system or connect and integrate with some of them. So we have all of our like cold, quote unquote, candidates take those assessments just so we can start narrowing down some of the talent. And then from there, we'll do a video call and interview. And if you don't have them do some sort of a form of assessment, even if it's very basic, like writing assessments, critical thinking, ways that they process information are things that are so hard to teach, right? So those things that are like the non-negotiables, I need someone who can do XYZ, send them some little quiz or test or something super basic so that you can get some sort of a framework of where they're at, how they process, how they think. And then once we get the candidate in to the organization, we have done remote orientation and training for a while now. And a lot of what we do is they're basically PowerPoint decks that have different parts of our business. And that's how we take them through the orientation. And they're with different people. So the new candidate gets to meet different people along the way, and they'll be training about a certain topic. And so even if it's a small team, I still think that's nice to get some exposure to other people, shadowing, just hearing and meeting new people. And we have one person that will kind of schedule that all out for them. So it takes some of that burden away from our team members who are also trying to, do their jobs and train at the same time.
Yes.
And then the other thing that I think that I would recommend to people, if you have anybody that you're really trying to integrate into your organization virtually at a high pace, is try virtual co-working. And what that is you just both hop on Zoom, you put your browser to the side, but like if you have questions, you don't have to chat it. You're just like, oh, hey, Michelle, what did you say about this? Or I can't find that file. Where is that at? Or it's those little things that happen a lot in the first, couple of days. So even if you do half day remote co-working, I think it's fun for a lot of people. We've seen our collaborations really increase with that. We've seen it really helpful if people are struggling with just prioritization or just trying to minimize distractions. It really helps because it's kind of that accountability at the same time, but not like babysitting, right? They're still working on their stuff. You're still working on yours.
Yes. That's the virtual co-working. That's brilliant in the sense where it's like, I don't want to say an office, but it's like we're in cubes, right?
Yeah.
Or an
Yeah, you
open
can
space.
poke your head.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, hey, I got a question for you, right?
Right.
And because it removes that barrier of guilt of, oh gosh, I gotta reach out to, Kelsey. I'm gonna probably bother her. It's, hey, we're here. There's, and I'm right here and I'm available as you have questions, and we can just let it flow as if though we are literally sitting next to each other. So that's a huge takeaway. I love that.
Yeah.
I think that might be even a, kind of going back to the survey that, where people are feeling lonely, that, what was it,
Yes.
12-15%, right? Maybe as a team, maybe we look at, maybe it's not the whole team because every organization is different sizes, but maybe we say, hey, let's break it people up into groups of 3 or 4, and let's do some, whether it's cross-functional or whatever, let's just do some the whole virtual co-working. I love that idea because you can now help people still connect
Yep.
in a way where they probably aren't. They're
Yeah.
naturally, it's just when we're working at home, we're just not picking up the phone like we would just walk in their office or walk in their space or yell over the cube,
Right.
yell around it or whatever. So
We've done that for like movie watchings and viewings as well. And that's kind of fun because we'll have like, especially like industry related movies or something that had to do with social media. We had it playing, and so some people were still kind of working. We were all on video, and it was fun because it was one of those things where, a lot of times it was quiet. So I wasn't that distracted. At least maybe other people were, but it was this very much like an office space. And we've even thought about, because we have this dynamic of in-person and virtual always. And
Yes.
so we've thought about, live streaming that, like live co-working, so that you can just see people on a projector on the wall, and that kind of combo, and making sure people feel included, I think could be a really good benefit for employees to feel connected. And I think it could be really good for managers to realize, especially again, those people are probably overworking more than underworking. I think that's what happens with remote work.
Yes.
Especially again, if you assume that everybody's intentions are good,
Yes.
that it's really, powerful to understand, man, this person's putting, 70-hour weeks in. We should really acknowledge that.
Yes. And that goes the gratitude, right? We've talked about that before, but as a manager, it's harder to find the things to show gratitude for, because when we work together, we saw it, right?
Right.
We'd see things and we'd be like, oh yeah, I really appreciate that, or oh, thank you for that. And some of us are probably better than others. I think that's something that we all can look at and say, how can I be better? But that's a barrier. I think there's right now, working that remote, there is a barrier in regards to being able to find those things to show gratitude and show appreciation. And it's interesting you brought up this whole co-working. One of the things, a conversation I had with a group a few weeks ago, one of the vice presidents had talked about his team he's had a team that was at their space, and then he
Hmm.
had some that were virtual, and that's how they were before, right? And he said he didn't realize it until they all went virtual, how they really didn't know each other. The
Hmm.
virtual group versus the in-office group. The in-office group was good and clicky, right? And then you have the virtual group, and they really didn't connect. They didn't really feel like they belonged necessarily. And he said one of the things that they've learned, over the last several weeks, is he started hearing conversations. They did start doing this whole kind of virtual, let's just have our Zoom up and we're available. And we have been meetings. Now we're all on meetings, where before they would only have the people that were in the office in the meeting. They would just update the people who are virtual. And now they're all coming together as meetings. He said he's hearing conversations he's never heard, as people are getting to know each other, getting to
Right.
develop relationships. And I'm like, that is perfect. What are you going to do, when we go back to normal, whatever,
Right.
whenever, right? The new normal. And it's important that we recognize this is something that, yeah, a bad situation caused us to have to realize it, but this is making us better. So we need to make sure whatever we do, that we include this type of virtual co-working. And I guess we didn't call it that, but that's exactly what it was. And just including them more in meetings. I'm like,
Right.
as I was sitting there, I'm like, you didn't have them in on the meeting? I would have thought you would have included them. And he was like,
Yeah.
no, we just updated them. I'm like, wow, I would have felt left out. I would have felt like
Yeah.
part of the team. My voice didn't matter, right? And as a leader in the organization, that's some of those basic needs that we have as humans. It's important that we're doing what we can do to meet those needs, so they feel valued and part of the team. So
Right. And I think just recording meetings, it's so simple, but recording them, for the people that can't be there, is also just a good reminder. We have a lot of people that have to go back and watch meetings, or sometimes, especially if it's like a brainstorm or a client meeting, it's way easier to process information after the fact, than, especially if you're speaking or if you're talking to someone. And so that is definitely something, like, don't forget about just recording those meetings, sending them out to people that maybe couldn't be there or had conflicts, or just, you didn't have the Zoom capacity, whatever the case may be. I think that that's just a very simple, but definitely powerful tool to leverage.
that's a great tip. That I had never even crossed my mind, but I could see it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't even. I don't think about that, but yeah, that is perfect. Having it recorded, then they can join. And if anything, even if you're a part of the meeting, you could still go back and rewatch it again.
Yeah.
Like, what did we talk about? Let's
Yeah.
for some reason, I'm unclear. And instead of having to ask questions, just hop back on there and look at it, listen to it real quick, and you're probably going to have a better understanding, a better takeaway of what
Yeah.
took. That's a good one.
And I think that specific instance, one of the things that has really helped us, with, just communication, right? Because when we work with businesses, we'll manage their social media assets for them, or we'll run a campaign for them. But before they kind of come into the organization, we have a kickoff call with each new business. And we want to hear from their mouth what they do, what their value is to their customers, where they feel like they shine and separate themselves. And we have a dialogue about that. And most of the time, in that discovery process, the business has already kind of talked to me about some of this, but I want it from them, and I want it to the
Mhm.
team, and I want it to the creative director, and I want it to the person who's responding on their behalf. And I want that message to be so cohesive. And it's so simple, but just a video recording that we put in their file. We have those recordings, we put them in their file, and they get watched a lot because we're like, they use the word customers, not clients. They use the word,
Ooh.
you know, like it's the industry jargon. And we're trying to make that authentic experience for those clients. But I'm sure that so many other businesses have parallels, even though they're not like developing content on their behalf. But you want to know your customers and you want to know their problems. And so if you can get that from them in the beginning, it saves so much of that, like re-asking questions or misalignment, of team members. And it's really simple. It's just a video call. We record it. We can make blogs out of what they were talking about. We can make videos and visuals. There's a lot of different things that we can do just from one simple call, video call.
And I'm so glad you just answered my question, because it was like, okay, so if you're doing these, if you're videoing them, can you take it that next step, right? And let's
Yeah.
take pieces and let's put it out there. Let's put it
Yeah.
on our social media. So we're communicating, because we have talked about, that fourth,
Mhm.
grouping that we're communicating to families. And are there some of those that we can use that information to get out to all of our audiences,
Yeah.
just simply from one recording or a few of those?
We
So,
did that for one of our clients. They actually they let us jump into one of their sales calls, and it was a meeting that they were kind of updating their sales team of like what's going on the behalf of the business. But we're like, ooh, this is perfect because we can get content from this, and we can change the verbiage a little bit and protect any private information. But we
yeah.
can write it in copy, we can create visuals for it, we can make sure that everything is aligned on their website, everything's aligned on their Facebook page, on their LinkedIn account. And all they had to do was just their normal day. We just popped into the meeting and were able to extract anything we needed from the recording. And again, think about doing the same model for your team cheerleading session, right? Maybe it's your stand up. Record it, send it to your marketing department. They can put that on your website. Send it to your HR department. They can make sure candidates know of what the state of the business is. Send it to your customer success team so that they can interact with customers and the messaging is all the same. As a business owner, all you had to do is push the record button. You didn't have to send it a million places. You didn't have to tell people a million different things. Like it's those little things that we forget about that can be streamlined, and they're free, they're simple, but they can make a huge difference.
Oh, huge. And what is the number one thing that, businesses struggle in? And we've talked about this: communication,
Yeah.
right? And and even as a new hire, as you talked about jargon, industry jargon, as a new hire, you can feel like you are in a different country. You don't understand what they're talking about,
Right.
right? And by having those recordings, that's brilliant. Where you're just simply improving the quality of the messages, and really kind of creating some alignment with what really is happening. And that's, like you said, HR, marketing obviously can do it for the external and so forth, and internal. But that leaves so many opportunities to improve on your communication and what we're doing. I
Yeah.
love that. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that, because that's a good one to remember, and to have people really, really be more disciplined to hit that record button.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's all it is. And I think, again, what a beautiful world that we can scratch all those highly produced training videos. Like, just get those off. Like, don't worry about those unless you have a specific business need. You don't
Yes.
need anything fancy. You need Zoom, Ring Central, GoToMeeting, all those different things. You can just use straight up your video camera on your computer too. You don't have to have any fancy software technology. And I think the disruption of communication is probably one of the things that frustrates people the most, right? I've answered this question a million times.
Yes.
And a lot of that can be solved if you just had a place for someone to access the information. And I think businesses get that, but they don't want to do these training videos. Like that's what they think of in their head as training videos. And this is not this. This is your team meeting recorded in a folder and they can access it. This is let me tell you how to find files. Let me tell you about my softwares that we use every day. And let me tell you about your colleagues that you're going to be working with. Like, quick, done, that you can, consume at a later date.
Well, yeah, and it's that self-study too. So as a new hire, I don't have to feel like I'm always maybe having to ask the questions or
Yes.
bother people. If we are disciplining ourselves to, I mean, which I think Zoom or any platform like this where you can show your screen, walk them through it. Because again, we go back to us being visual. I know some people will have FAQs and they'll have the checklists and so forth, which I think are very valuable. But I do believe in that physically seeing it, and some people are going to learn better and and it's
Right.
going to create much more clarity than the checklist, right? Because there's bound to be things that we don't include on there. Is it this one or is it this one or whatever?
Right.
And having, taking the time just to simply record those, and you could set them up in a plan for the first
Hmm.
month of, this is kind of the ones you need to be watching, and have conversations with them, right? About what you watch. But it allows your new employees to start feeling like they can contribute and really make some decisions on their own right up front. And they
Right.
have tools right there that they can watch it at midnight. They can watch it at, I mean, goodness, if you're Kelsey, you're watching it at 2 a.m.
Right. Right. Exactly.
That
Yes,
little
it does.
advisor, she doesn't, I mean, she's just nonstop.
Right.
So it's like, but again, it's everyone's a little different. So it
Yeah.
allows them not to have to wait and so forth. So
Right. And
that,
think about like a very simple training plan, which is I'm going to use Google because it's just easy, but a Google Doc that you have linked up to like your video recordings in the file that you use. Here's the steps, include whatever checklist you have. It's so technically simple. And then your employee comes in day one and you say, here's your training plan for the next 30 days. These are the things you need to know. Here's video recordings of everything. This is where you're going to find information. And then it's not as much of a process for training as, I mean, it's always, bringing new people into the organization is always work, but
yeah.
hopefully it will pay off quicker because those people will feel more empowered, more trusted, more supportive. And, you can really find those critical thinkers.
Well, and I like the idea that you had talked about earlier, was with some of those videos, you're having purposely having different people do it. So now I get to,
Yeah.
I get to see Beth. I might not know her, but hey, I'm probably going to be interacting with her, right? And then looking for those, when we're talking about the training, looking for those rituals to create that social connection,
Right.
right? Where, okay, they might do have some of those video times, or it's available, but that plan is perfect. And you're right, Google Doc is really easy for that.
Yeah, or any of those kind of like places that you can do it in Word too, but just
Yeah.
being able to have like a live link,
Yes.
because I think finding information in the first 30 to 60 days is really hard, right? Like I don't know what file folder I go to get this. I know I'm supposed to put this here and do that there, but like where do I go again? Like I've never used this. And I mean, we have very tech savvy people that we hire and it's still confusing. So I know that it's the little things that typically make the biggest difference.
Well, and it's even I don't know who to ask,
Yeah,
because
it
you
is good.
have your different departments, right? That's
Yeah.
one thing that we've bumped into quite a bit with that first 30, 60, 90 days. I think I should call this department, but I don't know who to ask in this department. I'm not even sure, yeah, that can
Right.
help create some clarity and depends whether they feel better about how they can contribute up front
Right.
versus after several months have gone by. So
Right. And I think, kind of circling back and wrapping up the flexibility is just it goes back to that how you define flexibility, right? It's people are going to define it differently and maybe your flexibility doesn't look like what Chatterkick's flexibility looks like. But I think if you don't define it, then you are giving it to the world to define, and it's a little different for everybody. So the one advice I can give or tip is just get a plan in place, define it, have a conversation, what it means to your organization. And hopefully, we've given you some tactics and ideas today, too. So,
yeah. Well, and I would say the common word I've heard you say is simplicity, keeping it
yes.
simple. Let's not overthink it. Let's work it and let's make it simple for people. That plan that you're talking about, we got to keep it simple too.
Yep.
And that to me is probably one of the biggest takeaways. Get the KPIs, get those things, but don't complicate it for people,
Right. Or they
right?
won't remember it and it'll be too hard to execute. So,
Exactly.
Good. Well, this was fun. Thank you. I'm glad I got to be in the hot seat today. So, thank you again for collaborating and joining us, and all the beautiful minds behind Revela Group. If people have not had a chance to look at your website, your social assets, or even just talk to one of you, I would highly encourage them to do that. They are amazing. All of their team members are. So,
Well,
thanks for joining us.
yes.
And until next time.